Hello, I am Lieutenant Kevin Petrus with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. CMPD is publicly releasing body-worn camera videos today related to an officer-involved shooting that took place on September 15th, 2022 in the 1300 block of Onyx Street. As we release the body-worn camera footage, the purpose of this video is to provide details, context, and analysis so that the viewers may have a better understanding of the event based on what we currently know. Please understand that this video contains violence and language that could be disturbing to some viewers. On Thursday, September 15th, 2022, at approximately 5:08 p.m., detectives in the CMPD Real-Time Crime Center located a stolen vehicle traveling on LaSalle Street in the Metro Division. The vehicle, a white Honda Accord, was reported stolen out of Charlotte just 12 days prior. Detectives began to track the moving vehicle using cameras in the area and communicated with officers about the vehicle's location.
Real time, can you copy a stolen vehicle?
When the vehicle was stopped at a traffic light, detectives were able to see that the driver had a firearm on his lap. Specifically, they were able to ascertain that the firearm was a Glock-style handgun with an extended magazine. They relayed this information to responding officers.
White Honda Accord, Tom Adam Edward, 4966, straight 87. I've got eyes on it right now, Beatty's Ford in LaSalle. The front end looks to be damaged with a missing front bumper. It's going to be turning left when it gets the light, going southbound Beatty's Ford. Occupied 2 times at least. Front passenger, we got a 94 with an extended clip, 94 extended clip.
Officers located the stolen vehicle and activated their blue lights and siren. Officers were operating marked CMPD police vehicles and were wearing full CMPD police uniforms. When the stolen vehicle stopped at the intersection of Dundee Street and Onyx Street, the driver of the vehicle immediately fled from the vehicle on foot while holding a firearm in his right hand. 2 officers chased the driver on foot from the location of the stolen vehicle to the rear of a house on Onyx Street. 2 additional officers parked their police vehicles near Onyx Street and Celia Avenue and began to move towards the area that the driver was running. There were 4 subjects in the car and 4 total firearms were located during this incident. During the time in which these 4 officers were pursuing the driver of the stolen vehicle on foot, 3 of the officers perceived an imminent lethal threat and fired their weapons. The suspect was not struck by the gunfire and was not injured. We will now show the footage from the involved officers. First is the body-worn camera footage from Officer Blobe. He was the initial officer to chase after the driver when he fled from the stolen vehicle.
Hands up! Hands up! He's running. He's got a 94 in his hand. Running towards Celia. Black male. Black shirt. Put the gun down! Put the gun down now! Put the gun down! Put the gun down now! Drop the gun! Hey, hands down.
And we're at Celia and Onyx. Everyone's 10-4. Just hold the channel.
Hey, stop moving. Stop moving. Dude, keep your hands back here.
Are you good?
You get hit?
No, I'm good.
Yeah. Hey, sit down.
Here is the body-worn camera footage from Officer Famulari. He was also pursuing the driver on foot from the location of the stolen vehicle and was behind Officer Blobe.
Hey, to the fucking ground!
Sorry, that's where traffic turns down to the left. Location.
And we're at Celia and Onyx. Everyone's 10-4. Just hold the channel.
Channel time is 10:11.
I need 11 minutes to my car. Which is a car showing up.
Don't be on it. Stop. Don't be on it.
Just hold that.
Okay.
Keep your hands back.
1315, shots
Man's
fired.
hit.
We don't know if he's suspect yet. Everyone check
Are
the
you
thing.
good?
You get hit?
Hey, I still got 2 in the car. I'm moving on 1. Dispatch, go ahead. No, put it on call.
Next is the body-worn camera footage from Officer Barr. He was coming from the direction of Celia Avenue.
Hey, drop the gun! 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 Drop the gun!
Where? What's your location?
And we're at Celia
and Onyx. Everyone's 10-4. Hold the channel. 10 on solid time is 1711. I need another unit to my car. We'll get the car showing up. Don't be on it.
Stop.
Don't be on it.
Hey, 1315, shots fired. We don't know if he's a suspect yet. Everyone check him in a second.
Hey, I still got 2 in the car. I'm moving on 1. Dispatch, go ahead. No, put it on call.
Hey, sit down.
This body-worn camera footage is from Officer Werchek. He was coming from the direction of Celia Avenue.
Hey, drop the gun! Drop the gun! Drop it! On the ground! On the ground now! On the ground now! Drop the gun!
And we're at Celia and Onyx. Everyone's 10-4. Just hold the channel.
Where's the other one?
I need another unit to my car. We'll get the car showing up. Don't be on
Hey,
it.
stop moving. Stop moving.
Just hold that.
Dude, keep your hands
I'm
back.
good.
There's one outstanding. One outstanding.
We don't know if he's suspect yet.
Are you good? You get hit?
No, I'm good.
We will now hear from Sergeant Stephen Winterhalter for analysis of this incident. Sergeant Winterhalter has been the Firearms Training Unit Supervisor at CMPD for over 5 years and is responsible for recruit and in-service firearms training. His previous experience includes being a member of the SWAT team, a sergeant over the Violent Criminal Apprehension Team, and a sergeant in the Homicide Unit.
At this point where you're going to look at Officer Blobe's body-worn camera footage from this incident, we pick it up here. He is inside the patrol vehicle behind the suspect vehicle as the front right passenger. Officer Blobe begins to exit the police vehicle as the car comes to a stop inside the middle of the roadway. Officer Blobe immediately gets out of the vehicle and begins to pursue the driver of the suspect vehicle on foot. And we can hear him relay to officers over the radio that he has observed a weapon, is beginning to tell the driver to drop the weapon, and continues to give verbal commands while on foot. Clearly he sees the weapon, the presence of the weapon. He's relaying that to fellow officers and begins to give out a description of the suspect in terms of his clothing description. We also observe on Officer Blobe's body-worn camera footage, as the suspect's running down Onyx Street, he potentially sees the presence of 2 marked patrol cars at the next intersection, which prompts the suspect to cut hard right into the yard of this house we see here and heads around the back of the residence. Officer Blobe continues to give verbal commands to drop the weapon and pursues the suspect around the rear of the residence. At this time, shots are fired towards the suspect by assisting officers who approached from the other direction. Officer Blobe did not fire his service weapon during this incident, but it was the initial officers that fired were the ones at whom the suspect was running toward with the weapon. Once the suspect is determined to no longer be a threat, officers take him into custody and secure the scene to continue the investigation. So this is Officer Famulari's vantage point immediately upon turning the corner of the residence. Officer Blobe is to his left, moving towards the residence, and the suspect is across the yard near the wood line. Officer Famulari has heard 2 weapons firing, and as you can see here, clearly there's no one else in the rear of the residence at this time. Assisting officers have yet to break cover from the far corner and are not in Officer Famulari's line of sight. It is at this time that he perceives the suspect as a threat based on the totality of the circumstances and the fact that there was just immediately gunfire prior to him turning the corner, and he engages the suspect with 2 rounds. As he reassesses and sees that the suspect is no longer a threat at this point, he no longer fires any rounds, and he moves forward to help the assisting officers with taking the suspect into custody and securing the scene. In this next video, we are going to see Officer Barr, who arrives on scene from the opposite side of the street from Celia Avenue, and then engages in the foot pursuit. As soon as he exits his patrol vehicle, he begins to give verbal commands to the suspect to drop the weapon. Officer Barr has seen him running in his direction, first on the street and then around the back of the residence while in possession of a handgun. As the suspect runs in Officer Barr's direction, still in possession of the handgun, he perceives an imminent threat and engages the suspect with multiple rounds. The suspect does drop the weapon as he comes to a stop near the wood line, and Officer Barr fires no additional shots at that time. We can see the suspect's hands are up here, and they order him to the ground, taking him into custody with assisting officers, and then move back and help secure the scene. On this body-worn camera footage, we will see Officer Werchek arriving on scene from the Celia Avenue side of Onyx Street. As he arrives on scene, he exits his vehicle and the foot pursuit has already began. He'll follow the path of Officer Barr around the back of the residence and observes the suspect running in his direction, still armed with the handgun. Officer Werchek and Officer Barr both engage the suspect until he drops his weapon and comes to a stop at the wood line. They'll keep the suspect covered with their handguns as assisting officers arrive on scene to help take the suspect into custody and secure the scene. So as part of our analysis, it's important to look at what the officers knew at the time of the incident. We know that the vehicle that the suspect was traveling in was a stolen vehicle as described by Lieutenant Petrus and Real-Time Crime Center capturing it on the license plate reader. So the officers responding knew it was a stolen vehicle. They also had additional information that the subject inside the vehicle was in fact armed based on the camera footage captured inside the passenger compartment of the vehicle and the observance of the weapon itself. This information was relayed to responding officers who then were involved in the actual stop and foot pursuit of the suspect in this case. As the officers stopped the vehicle there at the intersection on Onyx Street and began to pursue on foot, he was clearly observed to be armed based on the body-worn camera footage, the audio traffic on the camera, as well as the radio, that they observed him clearly with a handgun while pursuing. So he was attempting to flee while armed into the neighborhood and in the direction of assisting officers who had come from Celia Avenue. Why were the officers pursuing him? Well, they clearly had arrestable charges against this individual. He was non-compliant with their verbal commands to drop the weapon and continued to pursue on foot while armed. The suspect had every opportunity to drop the weapon and in fact actually had the opportunity to leave the weapon in the vehicle even prior to attempting to flee on foot. This would have totally changed the nature of the incident if the suspect had just left the weapon behind rather than taking it with him while being pursued by uniformed officers. So it's reasonable to believe that the officers involved in this incident felt threatened by this individual who was armed with a handgun and running in their direction. So as we look at the imminent use of deadly force and the standard with which it's used in law enforcement and these type incidents, we have to consider what's called action versus reaction. And that's the ability of an officer to react to a suspect's actions who's armed with a weapon. It's documented and a known fact that reaction is going to be slower than somebody's intentional act to start with. And this is irrelevant in this case because the officers perceived an immediate threat, did not have the luxury of delaying any longer than they had. Once they did perceive that threat, he continued to run in their direction, closing the gap between the two while armed. They had to act in order to protect themselves or each other. The officers did fire multiple rounds at the suspect, none of which struck the suspect, which led to them continuing to fire until the threat was no longer present. This is consistent with their training. Officers here at CMPD are trained to engage the suspect until the threat is no longer present. Once the suspect dropped his weapon, then the officers ceased their fire and moved in to secure the suspect.
The firearm that the driver was holding in his hand as he was running from the stolen vehicle was recovered at the shooting location. 3 additional firearms were recovered inside the stolen vehicle. Responding officers took 3 other subjects into custody from the stolen vehicle. 2 of those subjects were juveniles. Here are the videos of those interactions.
Hands up! Don't you fucking move! Don't you fucking move! Hands out! Let's go. On the ground, on the ground, on the ground, on the ground! What the fuck? On the ground. Hey. Hey, shots fired. Shots fired.
Yeah.
Officers involved. Head that way.
What happened? Get out the car, man. What happened?
Hey, I need another unit to my car. We're getting a crowd showing up. I know another unit. Dundee and Onyx. Dundee and Onyx.
What happened?
Don't you move!
Everybody on that tire, pussy tents might get the show. Why did you in my face? You just broke. Oh, why you chose? I'm so listen. This of course, that's what.
Hey, I've still got 2 in the car. I'm kneeling on 1.
Shit, though, I'm just bullying. I just jumped this gate, come get your stick back.
Hands out. Hands out!
My fault, man. I'm not doing shit. Yo, brother, dad, you ain't sliding out one time. Go get your lick back. I ain't got no type. I ain't gonna lie, man. Fuck them dog hoes. Ain't fucked up.
2. There's 2. Hands behind your back.
Can you come get me, please, Mel? Man, he too aggressive. Can you please get me? I'm not doing it.
Get on the ground! All clear? Yeah. 2. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. Come out. Get on the ground. Get on the ground. Get on the ground. Give me your hand. Give me your hand. Come out. Come out. Get on the ground. Get on the ground. Get on the ground. Cuffing. All clear?
All right. Slow the thing. Slow it down.
Hey, 294.
The driver of the stolen vehicle was identified as Shahid Covington. He was 18 years old at the time of this incident. He was charged with possession of a stolen vehicle and resisting a public officer. There were 4 subjects in the car, and 4 total firearms were located during this incident. 2 juveniles in the back seat of the stolen vehicle were also charged. One was charged with possession of a handgun by a minor. The other was charged with possession of a handgun by a minor and possession of stolen property. The CMPD homicide unit led the investigation of this incident. The district attorney's office has reviewed the shooting by officers, and no criminal charges have been filed against the officers. CMPD Internal Affairs also conducted a parallel investigation and has concluded that the shooting was within CMPD policy. The officers who fired their weapons in this incident were justified in their actions in accordance with North Carolina General Statute 15A-401D2, which states, "A law enforcement officer is justified in using deadly physical force upon another person when it is or appears to be reasonably necessary to defend himself or a third person from what he reasonably believes to be the use or imminent use of deadly physical force." The full body-worn camera videos can be found at our website, www.cmpd.org, and on the CMPD YouTube channel. Thank you for watching.